and good morning. Welcome to the MLM Lunchtime Leadership Show. Is that crooked?
It is sideways. There we go.
There we go. Awesome.
We back.
And you smeared the camera.
I did?
You did. There we go. I don't know why that still looks, but nope, there we go. Now it's better. All right, cool. So, welcome to the MLM Lunchtime Leadership Show. We are going over the book High Performance Habits by Brendon Burchard. So before we go over the next part, we're going to go ahead and invite some people onto here. Whoops. Turn in the camera.
Thank you for that. I was looking for that. Just kidding. Alerts. All of the people. Sharp. Alrighty.
All right, there we go. Alrighty.
Okay, so we're going over the one thing. Ruby, how are you? How are the workouts going? See you online. Michael's here. What's happening? So here we go. We're going to go over High Performance Habits by Brendon Burchard. We're going over... He doesn't even have chapters in his book. This is a weird book. It's not one that I'm probably going to be recommending to people, just FYI. But you can learn something from anybody. He's going over the one thing. He said, they're able to who think they're able. That was Virgil. I don't even know who he's talking about because he didn't give a last name, whoever Virgil is. Are you always on? Aurora asks. He says, what do you mean? He goes, this energized happiness. He kind of thought for a moment and he said, yeah, I really am this annoying all the time. And if you've ever seen Brendon Burchard, it kind of looks like they plugged him in too long and he's just wearing out that top 10% off the battery. He is just energized consistently, almost to the point where it's over the top. It somewhat comes across as fake if you see him on videos, and you don't know him. But he really is like that all the time. And whether that is something that he produced out of, figuring out what to do, it is something that he does all the time. So what this really boils down to is that it's funny that this chapter actually comes into something that I talk about a lot inside of our school, the MLM Millionaire Academy, is he talks about the 3 C's, I talk about the 5. So we're going to go into this. The 3 C's of confidence. He says self-confidence is the requisite for basically great undertakings. That was Samuel L. Jackson. So you have to have this if you want to really get ahead. Aaron's here. Hello. Justin, what's going on? Beth just joined us. That's good. So he said, once we found that confidence was so critical to high performance, I sought out 30 people with the highest level scores, because he scores people based on their high performance activities, out of basically 20,000 people that were surveyed, who strongly agreed with the statement, I'm confident. I can achieve my goals, basically overcome challenges, and overcome resistance. Shamala's here. Hello. So he went on to kind of look at this, and he was right. The people who had confidence outperformed those who didn't. Practice number 1, develop competence. Oh, wow, there's Daddy Long Leg. As our confidence, so is our capacity. William Hazlitt. So the first step, hello everyone, hi guys. The first step is developing this confidence. Now, how do you develop confidence? You develop it by competence. Competence meaning you know your subject matter. How do you get into knowing your subject matter better? Typically, it's done by practicing. You'll find that the people who ridiculously practice over and 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 over again, no matter what they're involved in, I don't care if it's weightlifting, I don't care if it's, coding, meaning computer coding, I don't care if it's chopping a tree, I don't care if it's doing hair, nails, makeup, whatever. It's the person that does it over and over and over and over and over again that usually becomes very, very good. And you have to have that desire inside to want to do good. It says high performers ponder the lessons from their wins. They give credit to themselves, and they allow those wins to basically integrate into their psyche and give them greater strength. So the competence is I know what I know. I know what I know. I know what I'm doing. I know where I'm going. I know how this works. I don't know everything. You'll find that, confident people will come across and be the first to tell you, I don't know everything. But the stuff that I do know, I know pretty well. And that's an important, lesson to learn. We're not talking about just the ego part of it, of, oh yeah, I'm good. Because I've met a lot of people who are good who don't practice, and then when you see them in the field, they are terrible. Arnold Schwarzenegger used to say it differently. He's like, I see a lot of people who go to the gym every day that look like, he just came out and said it. He's like, these guys come in and they work out, but they look like crap. He's like, why do they look like that? He goes, because they're here, but they're not going all out. And I think that's what Brendon, really talks about. He goes, performance prompts. He goes, the competence, the knowledge, the skills, the activities, or the talents that I have to basically work hard to cultivate inside my own life if I want to be really good at something. Next, he says, if I give myself credit for learning all those things, I would start to feel more. So he's like, if you looked up what you did well, and you wrote down what you did well, and you acknowledge, because that's part of it. There's the art of science, there's the science of achievement. I said it backwards. There's the science of achievement, and then there's the art of fulfillment. The science of achievement is basically knowing what to do in the order to do it. What to do in the order to do it and doing it often enough. The art of fulfillment is you have to get to a point where you're okay with that and believe it. And that's, a lot of people have an issue with that because of all this negative pre-programming, weird stuff that goes on in our heads where we do not feel worthy. And you'll typically find people who don't feel worthy aren't confident. Mm-hmm. In fact, I would probably go to say that if we studied a bunch of people who were good at what they do but don't feel confident, they don't perform at higher levels more often. Number 3, something I've learned to do in the past few years that I have not yet given myself credit for. So some people are really good at stuff and that nobody's acknowledged it, so they don't realize they're good at it, or maybe they've never compared themselves to other people in the same field. Now, I don't mean comparing yourself overall, oh, well, they're better shaped, they have more money, they're a better cook, not that kind of comparison. Comparison in the same field, hey, you know how to do these things, I don't even know how to do those things, you're better than I am. And here's what I found is you're better in something than about anybody. You're better at something than about anybody. Everybody is. 4, I feel that I can handle big challenges in my life right now because I'm good at learning how to, relax, cope, figure it out, beat your head against the wall, whatever you're good at. You got to just, figure that out. 5, a practice I begin doing every week to help me start feeling more confident in. So I did not grow up with an enormous amount of confidence. Probably had a lot to do with the fact that when you wake up in the morning, if the first thing you hear is it starts with the you always statements, you always get up late, you always do this, you always do that. none of which was positive. And it just drilled until the time we left. That's basically how every morning started. Well, then I'd get to school and, hey, did you get your homework done? No. Hey, did you turn this in? Hey, you organized? No. So just not an amazing amount of confidence, was not a truly gifted athlete because I wasn't involved in athletics. I tended to stick to things where I could figure out how to be good around, isolated people, whether that was martial arts or skateboarding. Eventually I got into working out later. I think that was like my sophomore year. And I realized the people who worked out looked better. Everybody acknowledged it. And then eventually that became something to build confidence off of. Jim Rohn says how you do anything is how you do everything. So because I stuck with the disciplines of certain things, that I finally learned how to use the stuff that I was doing on a regular basis. I was like, okay, I need to use that over here because I'm not following through over here. I'm not being responsible over here. I'm not doing that every day over here. The second practice is to be congruent. It says self-trust is the first secret to success, Ralph Waldo Emerson. It says they shape their identity by conscious will and have aligned their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors to support their identity. So it kind of starts out with your programming, right? And this is kind of a long list, but this is kind of how things flow through. You start out with your programming. Your programming basically programs your mind on how you look at stuff. And it programs you also to have a certain philosophy. Programming is basically all the input you have coming in. Mom, dad, brother, sister, aunt, uncle, whoever raised you, television. We're talking about, really the first 7 years of life. Because the first 7 years of life, you're actually building your self-conscious. And your self-conscious leads into your self-confidence and things like that. Tim's with us. What's up, sir? How's beautiful Wisconsin? So it basically gives you your input, right? And then you break down and you have your philosophy. Your philosophy, whether you're not positive or negative, your philosophy, whether you see the world as one piece of pie or you see the world as one big piece of pie. There's a lot of people who try to sway people's philosophies to have the one big pie mentality. And what I mean by the one big pie mentality is there's only one big pie, and that if you have stuff or somebody has more stuff, then everybody else doesn't get stuff. It's kind of like, well, there's only, and I hear this all the time. Well, they can't make that much money. Guys, money's fake. If you didn't know that, money's fake. They print it. It's not real. It's not real. It definitely isn't real now. It's not attached to anything anymore. So they just print more and more and more and more and more and more of it. So it's not like you have less than somebody else. It's just you haven't acquired it. It's not that there's a limited supply. So that's really what I'm talking about is some people have a limited mentality or limited philosophy. Philosophy then drops down to what? Your philosophy drops down to your identity, who you think you are, which drops down to your thinking, how you think about stuff, whether you're positive or negative. Then it drops down to, how you think about stuff, the questions you ask. That's what thinking is. And apologize, I'm off my list here. And then it goes down to your attitude. Your attitude is either positive or negative. Basically, it adjusts what you're doing, how you're thinking about stuff, where things are at. So you've got programming, you've got your philosophy, you have your identity of who you are, who you think you are. That leads down into your thinking and your thought process, which comes from all this stuff. And then your thoughts are actually going to give you that attitude, the attitude of being positive or negative, how you see things. If you picture things in your mind like they're going to go wrong, what do you think your attitude is going to be? It's going to suck. It's going to be bad. So this process is kind of what he's talking about, is being congruent. It's very hard to say you're motivated and then sit at home on the couch. But a lot of people have this incongruency and stuff they say that they're really involved in, want to do, and then they don't go do it. And you're like, am I nuts? No, usually this is your basic human instinct pulling you back to your comfort zone. So you make all these goals and you're like, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go smash this. I have all these goals. I have them written down in some cases. I can see them. The problem is when you go to do the activity, you're not tracking what you're doing. You don't have a system to move you outside of your comfort zone. So guess what? Your basic human instinct is basically has a rope around you and pulls you back into the comfort zone. If you've ever seen a rodeo, right? I mean, the animal tries to get away, they lasso it and they pull it back in. That is basically what your basic human instinct is doing. And what I've been taught is your basic human instinct does not care what your dreams and goals are. It doesn't care. It actually works directly against them. So unless you have a system to get outside of that, unless you have a system to beat that, here's what we know. You won't beat it. You won't succeed. You won't achieve. It's just the way it is. And there's some programming and mentality behind it too, but really it's a system that will allow you to break through. So practice congruency. Just some questions to ask. It says, the person I really want to be in life could be described as. So the first thing is you want to kind of pick out who you are who you want to be. And then you have to look at what are your activities. What are the activities of a person like that? So who do I want to be? What are the activities? I want to be a high performer, but I sit around all day and scroll through Facebook. I'm not going to be a high performer. I want to be a high performer, but I'm online watching movies all day. You're not going to be a high performer. High performers don't do that. I love what Dan Pena says. High performers don't chill. High performers don't hang out. High performers don't waste time or kill time. High performers don't do any of that. So if that is your ultimate dream goal, is to chill and hang out and just not do anything, you're not going to be a high performer. Sorry. Not even for a little bit. That's not part of their nature. Now we're talking about high performers on a super level, right? Not like I'm successful, because successful and high performance sometimes are two different things. Depends on what your definition is, right? 2, it says 3 things I could do each week to live more congruently with my vision of myself. I would say this completely differently. That's a really terrible, and again, I don't like how Brendon Burchard wrote most of this. What can you do daily? What can I do a couple times a week? A couple times a week is horseshit, basically. I'm going to do a couple times a week. I'm going to read something. There's no plan behind that, is what I'm saying. What can you do every day? Like a show. Some of you are in direct sales and network marketing, and you're like, well, a couple times a week, just a couple times a week. The reason that it's even said inside of meetings that it's just a couple times a week is really simple. It's because there's no commitment to it. That's why it appeals to people. Well, there's really no commitment to this. I can just do it a couple times a week. I can do it in my spare time. I love when people say, you can do your business in your spare time. Here's what I know about your spare time. You'll never do it. You'll never do it. It's not important. That's why you're doing it in spare time instead of what is the important time to do this and let's get it done. So again, it's these, what I would call soft statements, the statements that are basically lies that get you in trouble. And some of us have a lot of them. I had a ton of them. So this is why I know this stuff so well. Three things I could definitely stop doing in my life so I can live in my greater congruence with my ideal image of myself. What are some things you could do or stop doing? What are some things you should stop doing? Scrolling through Facebook. Now, what's interesting about your phone is you can actually check on there and look at how many hours. I spend an enormous amount of time on my phone. And I was looking the other day at where I was spending an enormous amount of time on my phone. And yes, it was Facebook. And I'm like, okay, am I doing something really productive here or unproductive? And guess what? It was mainly unproductive. Sorry, I got an eyelash here. It was unproductive stuff. It was things that weren't making us money. It was things that weren't, it didn't have to do with growth. It was just scrolling through all the BS that's on there and who hates who and why they hate and why you should join them in hating. So I started curving that with, okay, before I do that, there's a book by Brian Tracy called Eat That Frog. And Brian, the purpose of the book is basically to teach, if you had to eat a frog, you do it first thing in the morning. You don't want to procrastinate and put it off. So it's like, do the things that are not necessarily amazing feeling-wise to do, but are good for you, are good for the people around you, and are good for the greater good. Those are the things where you'll get the furthest ahead. Tony Robbins has this whole talk on this, and he said you'll find that high performers usually do the things that do not feel good instantly. They feel good later. they're good for you, they're good for the people around you, and they're good for the greater good, but it's because they don't feel good for you right away. Like going to work out right away usually doesn't feel good, so most people don't do that. Kenny, what's up? So the second or the third, where am I at? The second. Finishing out these 3 things you shouldn't do. So you can kind of pick out this stuff. Chance, what's up, sir? Practice number 3. We'll just keep going here. Got off subject. Practice number 3, enjoying connecting. So connecting is what it's all about. Dale Carnegie wrote How to Win Friends and Influence. He actually wrote a lot of books. But How to Win Friends and Influence People is probably one of his most famous. He taught courses for years. Most of the gurus in the industry have read most of his stuff that I've learned. You know, the Tony Robbins, the Brendon Burchards, the Les Browns, all those guys have dove into Dale Carnegie because he was kind of like one of the founding fathers of all this stuff. So you can make more friends in 2 months by becoming interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you. So this is a principle of focusing on the other person. How do you focus on the other person? You have to ask questions about them. That's the trick. That's really the trick. What I had to do is I kind of had to order it, or group it would be another way. Tony Robbins would say chunk it. I had to put it in groups. And when the questions were in groups, it made it much easier because then I could kind of stay and morph into. And what it starts with is just F, friendly. You know, if you're friendly and you learn where they're from and you learn about their family, then that's friendly, it's easy. It's what I call surface talk. It's like you're talking off the surface of what's going on. They're factual things. I do not get into a conversation about how people feel about certain subjects the day I meet them. Why? You're going too deep too fast. It's like that's not going to work out at all in a lot of ways.
And it also comes across as weird to people too. Like if you ask about their feelings far too much, like how do you feel about that? It's like, why do you care?
Yeah, I mean, it's like
I just met you. Like, you want to talk about my feelings? Like, what's really going on here? It just comes across as strange. A normal person would not ask you, like, about that. It just comes across as weird to people.
Typically, yeah. So, dang it.
You okay?
Yeah, I keep getting something in my eye. I don't know what's going on.
You might have an eyelash.
It's probably allergy season. Anyway, so performance prompts for this third one is, the main reason I want to become better with people is, like, why do you want to become better with it? Well, here's the reason. Because if you're in network marketing, you're building a network of people. Like, that should be easy enough to figure out, but for some people, like, that's like, well, why doesn't it work? It's because you're not good with people. I mean, I hate to say that. You're not good with people. I try to have this conversation with some people, and they're like, my people skills are amazing. I'm like, good, write down a list of your friends. I don't have any. Okay. 2, I know I'll become more confident with people when here's the thing. When you're okay with who you are, you're more okay with who others are. So work harder on yourself than you do on figuring out anybody else. 3, to gain more confidence with people from now on, when I talk with them, I'll think to myself, keep the subject on them. Keep the subject on them. Unless you're trying to communicate a point, you know. It's different if you're calling this person to promote, right? It's different if you're calling this person to promote. It's different if you're trying to update them on a promotion or something that they're asking the question on. But in general, make it 80-20. 80% of the conversation always should revolve around them. Even if they call and ask for something, how are you? What's going on? How's the day? What's happening in the world? What's good? What's new? What's exciting? Keep the subject on them for 80% of the conversation. Then, after you've done that, and after you've made the connection, then you can turn the conversation and be like, okay, real quick, I just wanted to go over something. Okay, so a formula and farewell for now. It says, as soon as you trust yourself, you will know how to live. And that was Jonathan von Goethe. So curiosity times competence, congruency, and connection equals confidence. That's how he has it. I talk about the 5 C's inside of MLM presenting. There's 5 C's to presenting. You want to be clear, you want to be concise, you want to be confident, you want to be congruent, and you want to be consistent in your message. So very similar to what he's talking about. Mine's geared directly towards, knowing what to do and how to do it, how to come across the right way. You'll make a lot more presentations. You'll make a lot more money with those presentations if you do it that way. So it says, while on the journey, will challenge you. At least you have a map now, is kind of what he's talking about. So he's just kind of wrapping up this chapter and this whole section. He says, seek clarity. That's number 1. Seek clarity on who you want to be and how you want to interact with others. 2, generate energy. So that way you can sustain your focus and figure those things out. 3, raise the necessity of your level of performance. So you have to see where you're performing at and raise it. How do you do that? You're not going to do that by feeling. You're going to do that by tracking. How do you know that you did more? Well, if you're counting reps, you don't go in and say, man, I really feel like I had it. That's what most people do. Man, I really feel like I had a good workout today. What do the numbers show? Well, the numbers show you did exactly what you did last time, or less. You're not getting ahead. You think you're getting ahead because you're tricking yourself into feeling that way. A lot of people do this in work. A lot of people do this in business. You're tricking yourself into feeling. The problem is that won't last long term. And people see it. Here's the thing. Everybody else sees it. You just don't see it. 4, increase productivity in your primary field of interest. How do you increase productivity in your primary field of interest? First of all, learn more about it, connect with more people in it, and find out what the experts do and do more of that. 5, develop influence with those around you so you can get them to believe and support your efforts and ambitions. 6, demonstrate courage by expressing your ideas. Demonstrate courage by expressing your ideas. Taking bold action and then standing up for yourself and others. So that's what we got for this. The summary guide is what's next. It says, whatever you are, be good, be a good one. Whatever you decide to be a good one. That was actually Abraham Lincoln said that. So he's going to go into, we're going to go into tomorrow, just kind of a wrap up of this. It says, here's personal habits and some end notes. So we're going to go over the summary guide tomorrow. That will be the end of the book. Next time we're going over John C. Maxwell, I believe is the next book, if I don't forget, which is kind of cool because we're ending this one at the end of the week, which is, I guess good. And then we can start John Maxwell's on Monday. So for those of you who don't have it, I believe it's A Leader's Greatest Return. A Leader's Greatest Return. I know it has a red cover on it. John Maxwell's newest book that just came out. I haven't even started it, so I've finished 3 or 4 books this month already. It's insane. I'm working on another one downstairs, hopefully to have done by the end of the weekend, along with starting John Maxwell's. So appreciate it. High Performance Habits. Plus.
So if you guys would like to subscribe to get these notes that we're taking on each of these chapters, and I'm not going to lie, I really didn't take notes on this one. I wrote down a couple quotes that I really liked, and I got a few things out of this book, but honestly, I don't like how the chapters are laid out, and some of it's kind of confusing and conflicts a little bit, so I kind of gave up trying to take notes on it. I just took what I wanted out of there. So I didn't really have a whole lot of notes on this one, but usually we take notes on each chapter and we send them out to you guys. So if you would like them, we would be more than happy to send them to you. This one might just be a little shorter. So if you haven't subscribed for those yet, I will put a link in the comments below so that way you can do that. And if you would also like to follow us on YouTube, we're uploading each of these videos to there so that way you can follow along if you happen to miss this. Or if you would like to go back to another book that we've already gone over, you are more than welcome to. So with that, that is what we have for today. Tomorrow we're going over the last chapter, and we will see you tomorrow.